Good morning to our lovely listeners and viewers of Sun FM Radio and TV. I'm glad that you could join us for this wonderful edition of Public Forum, which comes every Wednesday. Today is 3rd of September in the year 2025. I'm your host. My name is Lamek Zulu, professionally known as Four Legs. And my guest today is Mr. Sean Tembo, who is joining us from our Lusaka studios. So we are going to have an interaction with a man who you've come to know and appreciate. He's actually Mr. Sean Enoch Tembo, a Zambian politician and the president for the Patriots for Economic Progress, PEP. Mr. Tembo, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. How are you? And how is Ndola today?
Ndola is great. Ndola is great. Let's quickly just get into business, Mr. Tembo. Just give us a background of who Sean Tembo is, just in case somebody is listening to Public Forum for the first time. I know that you've been all over by virtue of you being a politician, but just for the sake of establishing the authority of our discussion, who is Sean Tembo?
Well, I'm a Zambian citizen, of course, 45 years of age. I was born from a family of 10. I was number 5. I grew up in Lusaka, Tendere compound. I went to primary school, Chitukuko in Tendere, proceeded to Kabronga Boys in Lusaka, then went to Livingstone, Hillcrest, and then went to Copperbelt University in Kitwe, where I did a Bachelor of Accountancy degree. And then I proceeded to work in various companies as an auditor. I also did a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Derby in the UK. I started running my own audit firm in 2004 when I was 24 years old, and then I'm still running that firm. I'm engaged in a number of businesses, hospitality, farming, and so on and so forth. I'm happily married. My wife is a medical doctor. She's a cardiologist, and she works for the government. I have 5 children, 4 girls and 1 boy. That's pretty much the long and short of it.
Nice one, nice one. But obviously, one would want to know when your political journey started. When did you think and feel that you can make a contribution to the Zambia's political landscape?
Well, I got an interest in politics sometime in 2010, 2011, just around the time of a transformation from the MMD under Rupia Banda to the Patriotic Front under Michael Sata. I felt that I could contribute to the governance of this country. And of course, I started nurturing that interest over a period of time until in 2016, it culminated into the formation of my political party, the Patriots for Economic Progress. The initial idea was to join one of the existing political parties. So I looked at what MMD had to offer. I looked at what the Patriotic Front had to offer, which was the ruling party at that time. I looked at what the UPND had to offer and their policies. And I felt that I couldn't quite fit in any of these existing political parties. That is what led me to consider forming a political party that is called the Patriots for Economic Progress, where I'm currently the party president. And of course, I participated in the 2021 general elections. I didn't fare very well. But I did better than most of the existing political parties at the time. You must remember that the 2016 general election had a very large number of presidential candidates. I think we were 16 in total. I managed to beat about 5 of them. And from 2021, of course, we've built on the fortunes of our performance in 2021. And we are quite confident that come 2026, our performance is going to be much better than it was in 2021.
Okay. When you say much better, are you really saying you are actually going to be the next president? Are you that confident?
Well, you must understand, my brother, that in terms of the current political dynamics, the Patriots for Economic Progress is a member of an opposition political alliance that is called the Tonse Alliance, of which I'm the spokesperson. And in the Tonse Alliance, we are yet to agree on who our presidential candidate is going to be. And should it happen that the colleagues in the Tonse Alliance decide to nominate myself as presidential candidate for the alliance in 2026, then I can assure you that yes, indeed, I will be the next Republican president. But should the alliance settle on a different person as our presidential candidate, myself as Sean Tembo and my political party will 100% rally behind that selected candidate and ensure that that candidate becomes the next Republican president.
Okay, nice. I love that. Now let's look at the performance of the UPND in the last 4 years that they've been in government. I want you to begin vis-a-vis economic growth and job creation. I'm sure that is key in terms of national development. Indeed.
Well, when you look at the performance of the UPND administration over the past 4 years, from an economic point of view, my considered opinion is that it has been substandard, extremely substandard. Considering where we stand as a nation, the resources we have in terms of natural resources and so on and so forth, I strongly believe that the UPND administration has significantly underperformed. And for me, the biggest indicator of the underperformance of the UPND administration is essentially their failure to lead a private sector-driven economy, their failure to ensure that the private sector is capacitated and empowered so that it can play a bigger and more significant role in the economic development of this country. When you look at where the UPND took over from in terms of a patriotic front, you realize that the private sector was facing a number of obstacles, which, of course, the previous administration had not adequately addressed. And considering that Mr. Hakainde Hichilema was coming from a private sector background, and he had worked for various professional firms, including Grant Thornton and so on and so forth. The expectation of the Zambian people, including myself, was that he was going to be more receptive in terms of empowering the private sector. But then when you compare the policies, the economic policies towards the private sector of the UPND versus those of the Patriotic Front, you realize that those of the Patriotic Front were even much better, which has come as a big disappointment to myself as well as the majority of the Zambian people. If you allow me, I'll cite a few examples.
Yes, please do.
When you look at the main obstacles to the private sector, to the businesses in this country, you realize that one of the main obstacles is the issue of lack of access to reasonably priced capital. When you go to the bank today, the interest rates that they are going to offer you will be in the range of 25 to 35%. It's very difficult to borrow from the bank or indeed any microfinance institution as a business and to be able to generate enough profits to allow you to pay back that loan. And also the process of being able to access a loan is very cumbersome. The banks and other financial institutions will always insist on collateral. And for a new business which is just starting, where would you have gotten the collateral from? So that eliminates the majority of upcoming businesses. When you compare our lending policies in Zambia with those of other countries in the region, you find that in the region, other countries like Namibia, South Africa, Botswana, Tanzania, you can start a business today and go to a bank with a business proposal, provided your business proposal makes sense, provided your business proposal looks viable. The banks in those countries will give you a loan without any collateral, without anything, just backed up by your brilliant business idea. Us as a nation, if we are going to grow the private sector, we need to be able to reach that level. When we reach that level, then we are going to have a lot of businesses mushrooming, and as those businesses mushroom, they are going to create employment, and they are also going to contribute to the taxation pool of the country to ensure that government itself benefits by collecting more tax. You understand? So that is one of the major obstacles. The second major obstacle is that, in any economy, the government is the biggest customer.
Yes.
So the behavior of that biggest customer in terms of how and whether they pay on time or not has a significant impact on the private sector. Mm-hmm. The challenge we have in this country is that successive governments, and when I say successive governments, I mean various administrations from the time that we got independence, they have a very adverse attitude when it comes to fulfilling their financial obligations to the private sector. When a company in the private sector supplies government, let's say you get a tender to supply beans to a boarding school or middle meal or whatever it is, stationary to a ministry, and so on and so forth. The government will promise you that they'll pay within, say, 30 days. But most of the time, in fact, all of the time, they'll take 2 years or 3 years, sometimes even 5 years without paying. So when you have a government that has such an attitude towards settling its debts to the private sector, then the private sector cannot grow. You understand? Mm-hmm. Now, when you look at the trend, like I said earlier, this is a problem that has been there among various administrations, not only in the UPND administration. But when you look at the trend, you'll find that this problem has increased under the UPND administration. Mm. When you look at the 2025 national budget, on the top side of the budget, which was the expenditure and so on, you realize that our domestic arrears is a categorization of all the money which the government owes various players in the private sector. So when you look at our domestic arrears, you realize that at the time that the Patriotic Front handed over power to the UPND on the 26th of August 2021, our domestic arrears as a nation were standing at about 19 billion kwacha. That means that the government at that time owed various players in the private sector a total of 19 billion kwacha.
Yes, yes.
Now you fast forward from 26th of August 2021 to date, you'll find that domestic arrears have increased from about 19 billion kwacha in 2021 to about 95 billion kwacha at the moment. Mm. So that shows you that at the moment, government owes various players in the private sector a total of 95 billion kwacha, which is an increment of more than 400%. My expectation,
yes,
which I believe is also the expectation of the Zambian people, was that the moment we elected a president like Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, who had a private sector background, who had worked in a professional firm like Grant Thornton, who had a master's degree in business administration, such a person would understand and appreciate the importance of government ensuring that it clears its financial obligations to the private sector. Because when government doesn't pay the private sector, the private sector becomes suffocated. The private sector becomes unable to grow. And when the private sector is not able to grow or thrive, it means that jobs will not be created. It means that the contribution of the private sector to the taxation pool of the nation is diminished. All those are adverse effects. Why? Because of the appetite of government to fail to pay players in the private sector. My expectation was that by now, that 19 billion kwacha or so in domestic arrears would have been reduced maybe to about less than 10 billion, which means that government was working towards liquidating that amount as opposed to increasing it.
Yes, I get the gist of the message you're trying to put across. Now, let's move on to another critical sector. I know when you are actually responding to that question, you've actually touched on a number of areas that I wanted you to address. But let's talk about health and education. I know that the current government will argue that they've created a lot of jobs for young people, obviously through teachers and the employment of nurses. So what initiatives would you undertake to improve the quality of healthcare and the education in Zambia if given the mantle to lead this country?
Well, the starting point in terms of service delivery, from my standpoint, is to improve the efficiency with which not only civil servants in the health sector operate with, but also just across the board. We have a very big problem in this country in terms of when it comes to the issue of efficiency and effectiveness with regard to service delivery. When you go to a typical hospital or clinic, you find that there will be a lot of nurses, there will be a lot of clinical officers and doctors, going up and down, up and down. They keep moving up and down. And yet, when you look at the queue of patients who are waiting to be attended to, the queue is not moving. You understand? Most of the time, if you go to a clinic or a hospital, especially at night, you'll find that there will only be one or two nurses or doctors who you can see visibly. But if you request for their duty rota and you ask them how many people are on duty, on night duty, you'll find that there are 10 or 15 people on night duty. So the question is, where are the other 13 people? Where have they gone? Why are they not in the hospital? You understand? So we have a very big problem when it comes to efficiency and effectiveness in terms of service delivery in the public sector. And the challenge is that, successive governments, again, I don't want to put this blame solely on the UPND, because this is a problem that has been there for a prolonged period of time, which the UPND has also failed to address. You'll find that successive governments, their solution to poor service delivery in the health sector is to throw in more manpower, throw in more personnel. That is not sorting out the problem. And that problem, I can assure you, it transcends across various sectors of the government. So I'll give you another example, which is close to home. When you talk about the issue of the police and crime, okay, you'll find that crime levels keep increasing in this country, and yet government's response is to hire more police officers. My view is that it's not about the number of police officers. It's about how those police officers are actually utilized to fight crime. Okay, when you go to a typical police station on any morning, you go to Emazel Police or you go to Matero Police or any police station across the country, you will find more than 20 or 30 police officers at the inquiries office there telling stories. Telling stories this, telling stories. They will be telling stories up to about 10, 11, and then some of them start disappearing. When they disappear, don't think they've gone to respond to any report somewhere. They are basically sneaking off and knocking off. You understand? And yet, year in, year out, we see thousands of police officers passing out. And year in, year out, we also see the crime levels going up. We see people being terrorized.
Mr. Tembo,
the question is...
Mr. Tembo, I understand.
Yes.
We get the picture of what you're saying. But the question is how...
Just allow me to...
Yes.
To conclude on that point.
Yes.
Yes. So you asked me a question to say, what would I do as president of this republic in terms of addressing the issues of service delivery in the health sector? Our first order of business would be to put in place procedures and processes that will ensure that the people who are currently employed in the health sector actually work as prescribed, that they report for duty as prescribed, that they are responsive to the needs of the patients as required. We are going to implement customer service standards across all ministries of government. If you walk into a clinic, we are going to prescribe a maximum amount of time that you should wait on the queue before you are attended to. If that prescribed time, if it is 10 minutes, if it elapses, then we are going to have a mechanism for you to file a report of the fact that you were delayed at that particular clinic in terms of being attended to. And that report will come directly to a specific agency of government that will be monitoring government efficiency and effectiveness. And when we see a trend that this clinic has a tendency of not attending to patients on time, then the officers working at that clinic will be, their performance will be reviewed, and those that will be found wanting will be removed from the civil service, so that we can employ people who are interested in providing a service to the people in a timely manner, not people who have an attitude.
Okay.
The moment you are hired by government as a nurse, as a clinical officer, or as a doctor, that is a privilege, because there are a lot of other people who are not employed. So if you are hired by government, you need to provide a service on a timely basis, not to pass some attitude, my patient, as if you are doing the patients a favor. No. Under my presidency, such attitude towards patients will come to an end.
Okay.
People in the civil service will work in a professional manner.
Okay, Mr. Tembo, thank you very much. Let's move on to another aspect of governance, and how would you deal with corruption and governance if given the mantle to run this nation? I know that we have had a number of governments. You are calling them successful governments. How are you happy, first of all, with the way we've handled corruption and governance issues in this country? And if not, what measures would you put in place to tackle corruption and promote transparency in government?
Well, when you talk about the issue of corruption, it emanates from the issue of accountability. And when you talk about accountability, you cannot enforce accountability without transparency. So the starting point is transparency. You as a government, you as a president, you need to be transparent. The moment you are transparent, then it means that you can be held accountable. And when you are held accountable, it means that incidents of corruption will significantly reduce. Now, how can you hold yourself in a transparent manner as a leader, as a president? We have laws in this country, one of which includes the issue of declaration of assets. When Sean Tembo becomes president of this country, he needs to demonstrate to the citizens to say, me, as I enter this office at State House, these are the assets that I have. I've got this house here, I've got that house there and that house there, which I'm renting out at this rental income per month. I've got this business here, which generates me so much income. I've got that investment there and there. These are my assets. You declare your assets to the people. If you fail to declare your assets, you as the president, at the top there, the way our president, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, has failed and reduced, giving all sorts of excuses in the book to declare his assets, then you as the president, you are sending a wrong tone in terms of accountability and in terms of corruption. The message you are sending to your ministers, to your permanent secretaries, and other civil servants is that you don't need to be held accountable. So it's an attitude. Once you preside over a government whose attitude is that they don't need to be held accountable, then trust me, you have already lost the fight against corruption. Because you as a president have failed to set the necessary tone from the onset. That is the challenge that we have in this administration. Okay. The president himself refused to declare his assets. I personally took him to court. I took him to the Constitutional Court. The court decided to rule in his favor and say that no, Sean Tembo, you cannot compel Mr. Hakainde Hichilema to declare his assets. He already declared when he was filing in his nomination. I said, yes, he declared when he was filing in his nomination, but that declaration is being kept secret by the Electoral Commission of Zambia. Can the Electoral Commission of Zambia share that declaration? And they refused.
Okay,
nice one. That was even after they passed the so-called Access to Information Act. That Access to Information Act is supposed to allow any key stakeholder to access information from government which they want. We wrote to the Electoral Commission of Zambia about 2 years ago, just after the Access to Information Act was passed, and we told them, we quoted a specific provision of the Access to Information Act and said, pursuant to this provision of the law, can you give us the declaration that Mr. Hakainde Hichilema filed at the time that he was filing in his nomination as president in 2021? The Electoral Commission of Zambia wrote back to us and told us that no, that law, the Access to Information Act, yes, it was passed, but it hasn't yet been, what was the word they used? Sorry? Yes, they said it has not yet been operationalized. So what is the point of passing a law and then you don't operationalize it? Then what good is that law? And that was 2 years ago. Up to now, the Electoral Commission of Zambia has not responded to us to say, oh, Mr. Sean Tembo, that letter you wrote to us requesting the presidency declaration of assets, here is the declaration of assets, because that law has now been operationalized. So for as long as we know, the Access to Information Act, more than 3 years later, has still not been operationalized. So you can see that the attitude of the current administration does not support the fight against corruption. Okay, Mr. My Tembo, administration, should I have the privilege of being president of this republic, will ensure that from the first day, I as president, I set the right tone in terms of transparency, in terms of accountability, and in terms of fighting corruption, which is lacking under the current administration. Okay, Mr. Tembo, let's quickly move. Let's talk about infrastructure development. What plans do you have to improve Zambia's infrastructure? I include roads, energy, and water supply in this particular question. And I also want you to tackle the issue of load shedding as you respond to this. Indeed. Well, when you look at the issue of infrastructure development, you realize that infrastructure development is very key to the economic development of any country. You can see that the road infrastructure which the previous PF administration put into place during the time that they were in office, during the 10 years they were in office, has significantly changed this country. It has opened up even Lusaka. Lusaka has been opened up. A lot of the areas that we used to deem as villages, you know, like Mungule, Lusaka West, Chalala, Ngwerere, have now been opened up. And those areas have now been urbanized. You understand? So infrastructure development is very key. Not only roads, but things like bridges, things like hospitals, things like universities. And my administration will ensure that we prioritize infrastructure development. But when you talk about infrastructure development, remember that is an investment. So it needs to be done in a sensible manner. It needs to make financial sense. If you are going to take the route of triple P, that is a public-private partnership. You know, when you look at the UPND administration, almost all the infrastructure that they've so far done are premised on private-public partnership. Now, the way, if you allow me to just quickly explain how that public-private partnership works, so that people can understand, is that instead of government spending either taxpayers' money or going to borrow to put up infrastructure, they engage the private sector and say, can you do this road? When you do this road, you'll be able to put up so many toll gates, and you'll be able to collect toll fees for this period of time. Okay? And then the private sector will use their money, do that road, and collect toll fees for a certain period of time. The approach of Triple P is well and good. There is nothing wrong with it, provided it is done in a sensible manner. It is done in a financially sustainable manner, which the current administration has failed to do. Allow me to explain what I mean by saying that it should be done in a financially sustainable manner. What I mean is that if I give the private sector and say, do this road, for instance, the Lusaka-Ndola road, do this road, and the starting point is that the cost of doing this road has to be a reasonable cost. You understand? That is the starting point. And also the period and amount of money that people get has to be a reasonable amount. It shouldn't be too much such that you are disadvantaging the government. When you look at the Lusaka-Ndola road project, the total estimated cost of this road was about $600 million. We'll discuss the issue of whether that cost is reasonable or not another day. But let's just focus on the issue of how much toll fees the company that is doing the road is going to collect, and over what period of time, based on what traffic. When I do the mathematics, and I'm saying this from an informed point of view because I'm a chartered accountant of many years of experience and practice. When I did the calculations, over the 25-year period that this contractor is going to be collecting toll fees, and based on the estimated traffic and the toll fees, proposed toll fees, and their increment year on year over the 25-year period, my calculation tells me that over the 25 years period, the contractor is going to collect a total of about $3.2 billion. Okay, now this is a contractor that would have invested $600 million. Is that a reasonable return? You know, my considered view is that it is not a reasonable return. We are giving too much money to the contractor. You understand? It is not a fair deal to the Zambian people. If I was president of this country, I would have rather gone to borrow that 600 million and then pay the interest, so that even if I pay another 400 million on top and pay back a total of 1 billion, that's fine. So that your total cost is $1 billion as opposed to 3.2 billion, which we are giving this contractor. We are enriching the contractor who is there for no good reason. You understand? And to make matters worse, this contractor is not even using their own money. They are not using their own money. The money they are using to build the road, they are getting it from NAPSA. NAPSA is our own institution. You understand? So the question that arises is, why couldn't government get that 600 million from NAPSA itself and then engage a contractor to do the road, after which we as the Zambian people, we keep the road? Okay. You understand? So there's a lot of corruption in terms of the way the little infrastructure development that is taking place under the new Dawn administration is being implemented. Under my administration, should the Zambian people be gracious enough to make me their president one day, under my administration, I'm going to ensure that when I sit, or any of my ministers or permanent secretaries sit on a table to negotiate a deal with the private sector, they put the interests of the Zambian people first. We don't just unduly enrich the private sector for no good reason, the way we are going to give that $3.2 billion over 25 years to that company for no good reason.
Okay, let's quickly move on to another key sector. And obviously, I'm sure you've been following what has been happening. Yesterday, the president was addressing students from the University of Zambia. Obviously, I also want you to comment on that as you talk about youth empowerment vis-a-vis CDF. It has been more pronounced under the UPND government. Are you happy with the way constituency development funds have been implemented? And obviously, in relation to skills training and youth empowerment, do you have a different strategy from what we are seeing today?
Well, my considered view is that the concept of CDF is a good concept, because it allows development to be done at the very lowest level of our society, you understand, as opposed to waiting for the ministry at the central government to approve projects and to hire contractors and so on and so forth. In other words, it allows some kind of decentralization in terms of implementation of government projects.
Yes.
But there's a lot that can be done to improve the implementation of CDF. And I have always argued that the best way to implement CDF is to ensure that it is not implemented at constituency level, no, but it is implemented at local authority level. You understand? It should be implemented at local authority level, meaning that it should be implemented at for cities like Lusaka, Kitwe, Ndola, Livingston, Chipata, implemented at city level. For other municipalities like Monze, Mazabuka, Chongwe, Petauke, it should be implemented at municipality level. For other small councils, it should be implemented at council level. Okay. Now, you might ask me to say, what is the advantage of implementing CDF at local authority level as opposed to constituency level? When you look at a constituency office, okay, if you visit any of the constituency offices, you find that it is staffed by just 3 or 4 people who are just administrative assistants. Okay. There is no capacity at constituency level in terms of engineering capacity or architectural capacity or any other technical capacity to properly review a project, to review the proposed drawings for this school which you want to build under CDF, for someone to really set up the specifications of materials that needs to be used to build this school, whether you're going to use 0.3 millimeter roofing sheets or 0.5 millimeter roofing sheets. Nobody at constituency level understands all those things. You understand? What they know is that we are going to build a school, okay, or we are going to do a bridge. Now, the danger with that is that as you implement that project at constituency level, you do the project, yes, and you take pictures, yes. But the question is that a quality project? And will it stand the test of time? Okay, when you look at the projects which have previously been done by government, let's say from the UNIP era, you find that these projects are still up and standing. You go to Central Police here. Central Police was put up before independence, but it's still there. It's still standing. It's still strong. It doesn't have any cracks. Okay. But when you go to these CDF projects, you go to a school which was done yesterday, you find that already it has plenty of cracks. You find that the roof is leaking. Why? Because there was no proper supervision in terms of implementation of that project. And when the government, I'm sure you saw that bridge, which was, is it in Monze, which was literally falling apart, and it was completely substandard. It was a CDF bridge. Okay, so when Let me just finish, if you allow me. When you have a situation whereby a government is spending taxpayers' money to put up infrastructure, which is commendable, but then that infrastructure is not of durable quality, then you have a problem. We are wasting taxpayers' money because we don't have an abundance of money. When we put up a project, we want that project to stay the next 50, 60 years. It is still standing. That would be good use of taxpayers' money. So my administration, my government will address that. And how we are going to address that is that we are going to get this concept of CDF, which is a good concept, and put it under the local authorities. Because the local authorities have the necessary technical expertise to properly implement these infrastructure projects. They have an architectural department, they have an electrical engineering department, a mechanical engineering department, civil engineering department, quantity surveying department. So they've got the necessary technical expertise to properly implement this project. And when these projects are put under their supervision and ownership, they will be better implemented, as opposed to a CDF office just inviting a quantity surveyor or an architect from the council when they are having a meeting. Next time they are having a meeting, they invite that quantity surveyor or architect is not available. They invite another one. Next time they invite another one. At the end of the day, there is no ownership by the local authorities of these infrastructure projects, which results in them being substandard projects.
Before I open the phone lines, Mr. Tembo, let's talk about agriculture and food security. And I did mention earlier, I wanted you to just touch on a very sensitive issue also, which is load shedding. How you would, deal with the issue that we have at hand. I'm sure it is affecting every Zambian as we speak. But let's talk about agriculture and food security. What are your plans? What strategies do you have? Or maybe from the Tonse Alliance point of view, or maybe you as Sean Tembo, what would you do differently so that we are not faced with these challenges, especially during drought, where there's lack of food, where we start pointing fingers at each other. So how are you going to handle the issue of agriculture and food security?
Well, maybe before I come to the issue of agriculture and food security, let me address the issue of load shedding, because you had asked it earlier. I'll quickly address the issue of load shedding, then I'll come to agriculture and food security. You know, the issue of load shedding is a very unfortunate issue. At the beginning, the government told us that we were undergoing load shedding because of a drought that we had the other rain season. But even at that time, we argued, we looked at the statistics, and we saw the loss of capacity at Kariba, and also looked at the other sources of our energy which are not affected by rainfall, such as Mamba and so on and so forth. And we were able to argue and say, look, the loss of capacity from Kariba is just about a third of the total capacity. Okay? And when you look at the level of load shedding, if we have lost a third of our total capacity, the expectation is that the load shedding would be about a third of the total time, which means out of 24 hours, we should have power for 16 hours and have load shedding for 8 hours, because 8 hours is a third of the 24 hours. Yes? But even during that time, we used to have load shedding for 20 hours, sometimes even 22 hours, and only have power for 2 hours. Yeah. So it was the level of load shedding that we were enduring last year was not commensurate with the loss of generation power that we endured in Kariba. Okay. So the question was, where was the other power going? And our argument was that government is secretly selling power in addition to the load shedding. That's why the load shedding is worse. They are using load shedding as an excuse, but this load shedding is caused by the drought, partially, but mostly by exporting the power. That is what we always argued. And the government refuted our arguments and said, no, it's the drought we encountered. Okay. Then along the way, we had plenty of rainfall. And we had floods, actually. And Kariba was full, as it is right now. And then the load shedding continued. Until at some point, about maybe 9 months or 6 months ago, President Hakainde Hichilema admitted that government is selling power to neighboring countries, and that is the cause of the load shedding. And the president went further to try and justify the export of power at the expense of the local economy. He told us to say, no, we need to earn some dollars. Okay, he said we need to earn some dollars. Now, you know, on any day of the week, any leader who believes that it is economically more beneficial to export power at the expense of local industry and local economy, then just know that we are not going anywhere. We are not going anywhere. That we've got a person with a completely wrong mindset.
Okay.
In the office of Republican president.
You've actually handled that aspect. Let's go to agriculture and food security. How are we doing so far?
Yeah. So I'll conclude on the issue of load shedding. My administration, should the Zambian people be gracious enough to, you know, make me their president one day, we will ensure that the local economy always has electricity, always has energy. But the current administration ignored that project, and right now that project is falling apart. When you look at the current hospital, the only hospital which is there in Kawambwa, it is a very small hospital. It just looks like a three-bedroom house in Matero. That is the hospital which is overcrowded. And yet there is a hospital which the previous administration started, which UPND doesn't want to touch. Okay. Similarly, when you go to Katete, you find there is the Katete Fruit Factory, which was built by the previous PF administration. That is a brilliant project because it would empower the local community to supply all those fruits, all those mangoes, which just go to waste when they are ripening, and allow them to be processed into juice. Okay, but that project is not being opened by the current administration, despite the various promises. So that is the challenge, in my view, that the UPND has had. They are very averse to touch any project that was started by the PF administration, and they just want to do their own projects, which is totally wrong, because you are wasting taxpayers' money. Should I have the opportunity to run the affairs of this country, I'm going to build on whatever the UPND administration have done, because whatever they've done, it wasn't done for themselves. It was done for the Zambian people. So me as Sean Tembo, as President of the Republic, I shouldn't stay away from projects that were started by the previous administration. That is a very wrong approach towards the development of the country.
Okay.
I'll go to the question by Mr. Douglas, where he's talking about the votes that we got in 2021 being very minimal, and whether on the basis of those votes we would be able to form government next year. You know, Mr. Douglas, 5 years in politics is a very long period of time. A very long period of time. So the attitudes and preferences of the voters in 2021 are totally different from the attitudes and preferences of the voters today and even in 2026. I'll give you an example of the late President Michael Chilufya-Sata and his Patriotic Front. In the 2001 elections, Mr. Michael Chilufya-Sata only had one MP, Mr. Chungu, one MP. And he was considered as a political non-entity because there were other heavyweights like Anderson Mazoka, who had more than 30 MPs, Christon Tembo, who had about 18 MPs, Brigadier General Godfrey Mianda, and his Heritage Party, who had about 7 MPs, and so on and so forth. So when you rank political players in 2001, Sata would come about number 6. Okay, so he was literally a political non-entity. Now, 5 years later, fast forward to 2006. In 2006, Michael Chilufya-Sata had the largest number of MPs, and he was the main opposition leader with more than 40 MPs. The other ones, the UPND, had gone to 3rd position. FDD and Christon Tembo had gone to 6th position. Brigadier General Godfrey Mianda and his Heritage Party had gone to about 9th position. So 5 years in politics is a very long period of time. Whatever results that we got in 2021, come 2026, those results will be multiplied exponentially, because we have a clear plan to develop this country. We have a clear agenda. Our agenda is something that even a common man can understand. Every voter, every listener knows that Mr. Sean Tembo can make a good president. And if we give them the chance to be president, then he can take this country somewhere. So come 2026, I'm very confident that our political fortunes will be far much more better than they were in 2021.
Okay, address the other caller. I just want to add 2 more calls to this. You can address the other caller. So that
the issue of, the issue of the levels of Kariba Dam is an issue that is shrouded in controversy. Why do we say so? We say so because there are 2 statistics that we get. Every now and then, ZESCO gives us statistics to say this is the level that Kariba Dam is. And when you look at the statistics that come from ZESCO, you find that when they compare the level of Kariba Dam today versus the level of Kariba Dam on the same date today last year, the levels are almost the same. And yet, last year there was a drought. This year, there was plenty of rainfall. Okay? So those are statistics that are always presented to us by ZESCO. But then, there are other statistics which are presented by the Zambezi River Authority. Mm-hmm. The Zambezi River Authority is a joint company between Zambia and Zimbabwe. And the chief executive officer of the Zambezi River Authority is a Zimbabwean. So there is that arrangement between Zambia and Zimbabwe to keep alternating the CEO. This one serves 5 years, then a Zambian comes, serves 5 years, just like that. So the one who is there currently is a Zimbabwean. And the statistics that come from Zambezi River Authority show that Kariba Dam is almost full. It's almost full. Okay. Now, there is even a third source of statistics from the electricity generation company of Zimbabwe. I've forgotten the name, what they call it. That company is the equivalent of ZESCO in Zimbabwe. That company also publishes these statistics. And the statistics of that electricity company in Zimbabwe, they tally with the statistics of Zambezi River Authority. And they show that Kariba Dam is almost full. In fact, almost every month or two, that company in Zimbabwe would issue a public notice. If I had time, I was going to search for it on the internet and share it with you. And in that public notice, they would be telling the people to say, due to increasing levels of water in Kariba Dam, load shedding has been reduced by so many hours. As we speak right now in Zimbabwe, across the whole country, the load shedding is at 2 hours per 24 hours per day. 2 hours per day, which means they have electricity for 22 hours and only have a blackout for 2 hours. Okay? And the source of electricity for Zimbabwe is Kariba Dam. And for us, our source is also Kariba, but for us, Kariba only contributes about 1/3. We have other sources like Mamba and up north there, those power stations. So when you look at these statistics, and if you were to make a determination in terms of who is telling the truth and who is not telling the truth, my judgment would be that ZESCO is not telling the truth, and that Zambezi River Authority and that electricity company in Zimbabwe are the ones who are saying the truth. Okay. But there is that controversy. So I'll leave it to the people to make a judgment. But my judgment is that ZESCO is not telling the truth.
Okay. I'm glad that you've addressed this, Mr. Tembo. I would have loved us to go on and on. But I'm looking at time. Just give us your concluding remarks, your last message that you'd want people to take away from this conversation that we've had.
Indeed. My concluding remarks are quite simple and straightforward. When you look at this country of ours, which we call Zambia, you find that we are blessed in a lot of ways in terms of, natural resources. We have plenty of fertile lands, we have plenty of minerals, we have good soil, we have rainfall most of the time, compared to other countries in the region who are deserts and so on and so forth. And we don't have most of the natural disasters that other countries suffer from, like earthquakes and so on and so forth. And yet, when you look at the economic plight of our people, you realize that poverty levels in Zambia are very high, very, very high. You understand? And my submission is that we, the Zambian people, are not supposed to be suffering the way we are suffering. God did not want the Zambian people to suffer the way we are suffering. Because if God wanted us to suffer the way we are suffering, He would not have blessed us with all these things. He would not have blessed us with all these minerals. He would not have blessed us with all this fertile soil. He would not have given us all that. He would have just given us a desert and say, go and eat dust. But he didn't do that. Okay, so where is the problem? The problem is the leadership. We have an appetite to elect into office leadership who are incapable of delivering to the aspirations of the people. Leadership which is incapable of converting our huge economic potential into actual wealth for the benefit of the Zambian people. Leadership which is devoid of corruption. Leadership which is competent and visionary. You know, so you, the Zambian people, have a choice to make. It's either you can be complaining every day, vintu vavuta, malaiti kulibe, whether mzamba kudieka lukungu every day, or you can do something about it. What can you do about it? You can elect a competent and visionary president in 2026 who can turn around the fortunes of this country so that you can stop complaining and start benefiting. Okay? The choice is yours. That president is available, and that president is no other than Sean Tembo. You have a choice to make. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tembo. I'm glad that you could spare some time just to be with us and share your vision with that. And I'm hopeful that these also your sentiments on this show are backed by the Tonse Alliance. So Mr. Sean Tembo has been my guest on today's edition of our public forum. He has taken time to actually elaborate more on a number of issues that affect Zambians. And now I throw it back to you, the people, to make your decision just like he said. So on behalf of my guest, Mr. Sean Tembo, I've been your host. My name is Lamek Zulu, also known as Four Legs, saying God bless you. Continue enjoying our programming on Sun FM radio and TV. I know after this show, our press review at 13:30 is a program that you wouldn't want to miss, because people will be reacting to what Mr. Sean Tembo has said today. So on behalf of the production team, this is where we are saying bye-bye, God bless you, and continue enjoying our programming on Sun FM radio and TV. For now, we are out. Bye-bye.